How's it going, folks? Welcome back to the channel. Happy Monday. There is no game to analyze this week, so there's no Monday breakdown on the channel this week. Loads to come on the channel, though. The Huddle breakdown will be here as normal on a Thursday. I'm going to speak to a journalist about Riley McGregor, see what kind of players Celtic are bringing into midfield, and I'll have a 2-minute take for you tomorrow on the channel. Today, though, I'm going to do a Q&A style video. So I asked on Twitter last night for anybody to send in a few questions that they wanted me to answer, and some people have actually responded. So I'm going to answer those questions today in the best I can, give my opinion on what people were sending in. If you are not subscribed to the channel and you want to see more of these videos, hit the subscribe button below, like the video so more people can see them. And if you do have any questions that you want me to answer, Celtic or otherwise, leave a comment below and I'll try to get to some of them when I do have spare time. So let's get to some of the questions that were sent in last night. So one of the first questions that came in was from Mark C, who asked, will Julian and Cameron Carter-Vickers work as a partnership in defence? So I'm going to be quite annoying with some of my answers. I'm going to say that depends quite a bit to some of these, and I think it does depend. Firstly, Julian is back training. Hopefully he will be back fit fairly soon, and we'll get to see whether or not Cameron Carter-Vickers and Christopher Julian actually works as a partnership. The one thing that I would say it massively depends on is which of them is going to play as the right-sided centre-back. So Carter-Vickers has played there for the majority of the season so far. Julian has obviously been out, but when Christopher Ajer was at the club, Julian also played on the right side of him. So will Christopher Julian slot into that left-sided centre-back position in the same manner that he would in the right-sided centre-back, and vice versa with Cameron Carter-Vickers? Now, in theory, it should work because Christopher Julian is a step up from Starfelt, I think, in terms of his defensive qualities, in terms of his ability on the ball, in terms of his aerial ability. I think Christopher Julian, most people would agree, is a better defender than Carl Starfelt. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. Sometimes the communication can't be the best between the two defenders. But in theory, I think it actually should work because he is a better player than Carl Starfelt. It takes time for things to develop, though. We saw with Starfelt at the start of his career, and even still during his Celtic career, he still hasn't really settled all that much into that position beside Cameron Carter-Vickers. I think Julian is more confident in his ability. He's more capable of actually just developing that relationship like he did with Christopher Ajer, and I think it should work. I do think it would work, and if it does work, you've got one of the best defensive partnerships in the league. But the question still remains, will Christopher Julian be fit for the remainder of the season? That's the big question that remains with him. The third thing that I will mention about Christopher Julian and Cameron Carter-Vickers and whether or not it would work is something that I will touch on later on, and that is Ange going to stick with the 4 at the back system that he has done so far? Now, we've seen Ange tinker with a 3 at the back system over the last couple of weeks, and that could develop now that Celtic have more midfielders to work with and more players at his disposal. So would a Cameron Carter-Vickers, Carl Starfelt and Christopher Julian partnership, would that be a thing that Ange would try? Personally, I don't think that's as balanced as going with the 4 at the back, but that could be something that we see with Cameron Carter-Vickers at the right side, Carl Starfelt at the left side, and then Julian in the middle as a centre-back. That could be something that Ange tries. We just don't know whether he's going to stick with a 4-3-3 or go to a more 3 at the back style system. So that will depend, and that will really judge. We'll have to wait and see and judge whether or not this partnership works. But to answer your question straight out, Mark, I do think it should work. The next question is from Forrad. He asks, which Celtic player from the last 10 years do I think would work best in the Ange system, and which one do I think would improve the team so much? I'm going to be quite boring in my answer here. I think it's fairly simple. It's Kieran Tierney, because firstly, Celtic desperately need a world-class left-back. They haven't replaced Kieran Tierney since he left the club, and we see what Kieran Tierney is doing at Arsenal. Even though Arsenal are still a little bit of a shambles, we see what he does. He goes straight into the team. He's already European level. He's one of the best left backs in the Premier League. And that's really what Celtic are missing. That key ingredient is a really good left back, because if you have Anthony Ralston and Juranovic fighting out for that right back position, the left back position, you've got Greg Taylor, you've got Liam Scales. Now, I know you have Hatate now, so that will also depend whether he'll slot in as the left-sided player in the defence for under Ange, or whether or not he'll play midfield. But that's what you're missing. You're missing Kieran Tierney bombing up the wing, overlapping, and I do think he'd be able to underlap as well. I think he has the quality to do so. He's just a phenomenal player, one of the best players Celtic have produced in the last number of years, and instantly he goes in and he's the best player in the team still, I would imagine. If you look at Celtic's overall squad, I still think if you slot Kieran Tierney in there, he's probably still the best player in the team. So yeah, I don't think you can look much further than him. I was actually searching for names maybe further on past the Brendan Rodgers era and maybe into the early 2010s, but I just don't think there's any player in there. You can talk about Gary Hooper. Would he be good in this system? I know a lot of people are talking about whether or not he should have left the club recently. I don't think he's better than Kyogo. Then the likes of Edouard, of course. Ousmane Dembele is another one that you would think would still be very good in this system, but I just think Kieran Tierney goes in here, instantly improves where Celtic badly need to improve, and voila, you've got a world-class left-back. The next question comes in from Oceanside Fella, who asks, against teams playing a low block, do you think Ange will go with two up front like he did against St. Johnstone? Now, I think this is an interesting question because that was the first time Ange actually did that. It was the first time he changed from the system that we thought he wasn't going to change at all. And with the new midfielders coming in, it is a more pliable option to do so. Now, I don't know if he'll go with the traditional 3-5-2 because he hasn't really done that all that much. When he did it with Australia, it was more of a 3-2-4-1, which was actually quite controversial at the time because obviously Australia didn't have the quality that Celtic have in comparison to the opposition that they're playing against. So I think a 3-2-4-1 might be a more pliable option for Celtic with the players that they have at hand. I don't really think they have the strike options to play a 3-5-2 really, unless Giakoumakis comes in beside Kyogo, but I still think that's a bit of a mismatch. It's too almost the big guy, small guy sort of thing, and I don't think that suits what Ange is trying to do at all. So a 3-2-4-1 with two at the base and then the four players up front, be that Tate, be that Kyogo, Jota, Abada, you've got McCree coming in there now too. So you have a lot of options as a centre attacking midfielders, but you don't have a lot of options in terms of the strike force. So potentially a 3-2-4-1 might be something that he tries to do when the teams are playing a low block. My favourite word these days is actually low block though, because nobody says parking the bus anymore. It's just it's a low block now. It's a fancy term for parking the bus. When teams are parking the bus against Celtic, they need to be quicker on the ball. It's not really about the system, really, in my opinion. Look, the 4-3-3 has failed to break them down, but that to me is more down to the players implementing the style of football that Ange is trying to play. The worst thing that you can do is play slow, monotonous build-up play against a team that are parking the bus. What Celtic need to do is just be quicker in possession, pass the ball faster, get through the lines, have Kyogo running off, stretch the team as much as possible, and then you'll get in behind them. You can do that with a 4-3-3, but you can do it with a 3-2-4-1 as well. And I think you're more likely to do it with a 3-2-4-1 because obviously you've got more forward players, you've got more players to move about and stretch the defence. So I think, people will always search for that thing to improve where Celtic need to improve. I think Ange will figure that out himself. He is definitely more qualified than I am to answer that question, but I do think with the more midfield players that we have now at our disposal, the more attacking players that we have, the more creative players that we have, the issue that Celtic are having with the low block or the parking the bus is not going to last as long as it did in the first half of the season. Final question that I'm going to touch on comes in from Brain Crush, who asks, with all the midfield signings, do you think McGregor's captaincy is under threat? Now, that's a weird enough question. I'm not sure if you're asking if McGregor's captaincy is under threat or if McGregor's position is under threat. If you're talking about his captaincy, absolutely not. I don't think there's anybody in the team that is as much of a leader who deserves to be the Celtic captain more than Callum McGregor. You can say maybe Joe Hart leads by example. He could be the vice captain if McGregor's captaincy is under threat. Joe Hart's probably the most likely to take it off him. Cameron Carter-Vickers is another man to do so. But in terms of a player that's going to be playing consistently, who has earned his stripes at Celtic, who has earned the right to captain Celtic really, and who leads by example both on and off the pitch, I don't think you can look much further than Callum McGregor as a captain. In terms of his position, if you want to talk about his position and whether or not that's under threat because of all the new midfield signings, I would also say no, because he is one of Celtic's most consistent players. He plays the most amount of minutes of any Celtic player by far. So naturally, you're going to see some games where he's not at his best. The question is really what style of system Ange is going to play. Again, that word, it depends. I think in European level, he can be exposed as a number six because he's not a natural number six. He's not a defensive player really as such. I would have him more as a box-to-box midfielder than anything else. But I still think he's one of Celtic's best players when it comes to his calmness on the ball, his ability to pick out a pass when needed. Yes, he can be found out a couple of times when it comes to his defensive qualities, but offensively, I think he is what Celtic need as that link play man. And if you're playing a 4-2-3-1, if you're playing a 4-3-3, generally what you have is a defensive player who's doing all the dirty work, and then the box-to-box midfielder like Callum McGregor who's going to pass it, and then maybe one of David Turnbull and Tom Rogic as the creative players in midfield. That's a very basic system, but that's generally what teams work with. And I think Callum McGregor, there are no better link men in midfield in Scotland than Callum McGregor. Maybe Hatate comes in and puts him out of position. I haven't seen Hatate play football, so maybe he is better than Callum McGregor. I just don't know. Itaguchi is going to be a defensive player. I don't think he's going to put Callum McGregor out of the team. And in terms of McCree or any of the rest of them coming in, I just don't believe that any of them are better than Callum McGregor as of yet. They may come and prove me wrong, but in my opinion, Callum McGregor's position is not under threat. His captaincy definitely is not under threat. And ultimately, I think he will go down as one of Celtic's best ever players, especially of the 21st century. If you look at the lists of captains, he is one of Celtic's most consistent players who has played an extortionate amount of minutes, and his consistency is off the scale in terms of his quality of performance. So I'm a big fan of Callum McGregor's. I don't think his position or his captaincy is under threat. So that's all the questions that I've got time to touch on today. I hope you're happy enough with the answers. If you disagreed with my answers, if you send in a question, do let me know in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. And if you have any more questions that you want me to touch on the channel, do let me know below. Coming up on the channel this week, the Huddle Breakdown will be here on Thursday again. I'll be talking to a journalist about Riley McGree, see what kind of player he is, see what kind of player Celtic have on their hands if that transfer goes through. And tomorrow there will be a 2-minute take as well. No Monday Breakdown this week because there's no games. Game next week, we'll be back at it again. So thanks for watching, folks. If you're not subscribed to the channel, do hit the subscribe button below. I'm trying to get to 4,000 subs. If I could get there by the end of the month, that would be absolutely brilliant. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll chat to you later. Good luck.